It was supposed to be one of the most significant days of my life, the day I would finally graduate, something I had worked for relentlessly. Countless sleepless nights, endless hours of studying, pushing myself to prove that I was capable. I was excited to step into the next chapter of my life with dreams that were finally within reach. But instead of celebration and love, all I felt was the sting of disappointment. My parents weren't there. Graduation day came and I stood at the ceremony, scanning the sea of faces for any sign of them, but there was nothing. No familiar face in the crowd, no congratulations, no hugs. I felt an immense weight on my chest as I walked across the stage to accept my degree. A piece of paper that represented all the hard work and sacrifices I had made to get to this point. I texted my mom, hoping for at least some form of recognition, anything, even a simple, "I'm proud of you," but the phone remained silent. After the ceremony, I tried calling. Nothing. I called again, left a voicemail, and still nothing. When I returned home that evening, I was still hopeful, still holding on to the hope that at least my parents would make an effort, acknowledge that I had achieved something. But again, nothing. The house was empty, except for a few casual greetings from my younger siblings, and that was it. My parents were busy, too busy to even think about me. Then, a few hours later, I received a message from my mom. I couldn't believe what I was reading. It wasn't a congratulations or even an acknowledgement of my graduation. Instead, it read, "We need $2,500 for your sister's wedding. She deserves it. Can you help?" I stared at the screen in shock. I had just graduated, my moment, my achievement, and she was asking me for money for my sister's wedding. It wasn't the money that hurt. It was the complete disregard for me, for everything I had done. My sister's wedding had somehow become more important than my graduation. She, the perfect one in the family, always getting the spotlight, the attention, and here I was, completely invisible. I felt a sudden surge of anger and hurt, a realization that I had always been pushed aside. My parents never seemed to care about my accomplishments or acknowledge the sacrifices I made. They were too focused on her, my sister, always the one who deserved everything, while I was left to fend for myself, always striving but never quite getting the recognition I deserved. In that moment, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I replied without thinking. Then ask her to pay for it. It was a line I had crossed, but I didn't care. I was done being the one who always gave, always worked hard, but never got anything in return. I had been ignored for too long, and I wasn't going to let this go unnoticed. After sending the message, the room was filled with silence, like I had just dropped the bomb. My phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't my mom. It was the police. The tension had reached a boiling point, and now they were trying to make sense of what had happened. But the truth was, I wasn't the one who needed to explain myself. If anything, it was my parents who owed me an explanation. They had pushed me aside for too long. If you felt the weight of that moment, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next part of this journey. After that night, everything changed. The silence in the house was deafening. I didn't know how to deal with it. My parents didn't speak to me, and they didn't apologize for what they had done. They didn't even attempt to reach out. I could feel their anger, their disappointment, but I didn't know why they were upset. I had finally stood up for myself, and instead of being proud of me for speaking my truth, they acted like I had committed a grave sin. Days passed, and the silence only grew louder. My father didn't look me in the eye, and my mother, she didn't even acknowledge my presence. But the worst part was that I couldn't shake the feeling that my sister, Emily, wasn't even aware of what was going on. She hadn't really said anything after the confrontation, and I hadn't heard from her since. I tried to reach out to her, but she didn't pick up. I left a message, hoping she would at least try to understand how I was feeling. but there was nothing. Then, out of nowhere, Sarah, my stepmother, came to me. It was strange because Sarah usually didn't get involved in family disputes. She was always the peacemaker, always trying to keep things calm. She was the one person I didn't expect to approach me. But she did. "Can we talk?" she asked softly, sitting beside me. Her presence was gentle, her voice comforting, but I could see the weight of the situation in her eyes. She had been silent all week, choosing to stay out of the conflict, but now she was here. "I know this is difficult for you. I know you feel like you've been overlooked, and I'm sorry that this happened." She paused, and I could see the sincerity in her eyes. "But I need you to understand that your parents, they've been through a lot too. They don't always know how to express their love, especially after everything with your mom." I couldn't believe it. Sarah, the one person who had always tried to keep the peace, was apologizing for my parents' behavior. But her words didn't bring me any relief. I didn't need their apologies anymore. I needed recognition, and they weren't willing to give it. "You don't have to forgive them right away," Sarah said. "But I want you to know that I'm here for you, whatever you decide." I sat there in silence, processing everything she had said. The truth was, I didn't know what I was supposed to feel anymore. The disappointment I had felt for so long hadn't just disappeared, and neither had the hurt. But something inside me was starting to shift. I had always been the one to keep the peace, the one to stay silent when I felt wronged, but now I was tired of being quiet. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew I couldn't let this go on any longer. I had to make a decision. If my parents couldn't see me, then I would make sure I saw myself. If you feel like you're in a similar situation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to follow my healing journey. Days passed, and I finally made the decision. I was done waiting for my parents to come around. I wasn't going to beg for their approval, and I wasn't going to apologize for standing up for myself. I had always done what they asked, always worked hard to get their attention, but it was never enough. This time, I would do what was best for me. I reached out to Emily again, and this time she responded. She texted, "I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say before, but I understand now. You've always been there for me, and I took that for granted." For the first time in years, I felt heard. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. My sister didn't fully understand the depth of the situation, but she was trying. And for me, that meant everything. But the real breakthrough came when I finally sat down with my father. He didn't apologize, but he acknowledged my feelings. It wasn't the apology I had wanted, but it was the recognition I needed. And with that, a weight lifted from my shoulders. In the end, I realized something crucial. I didn't need my parents' approval to be happy. I had always been good enough, even when they didn't see it. It wasn't easy, but I had learned to stand up for myself, to speak my truth, and to choose myself first. If you've ever had to make that choice, to put yourself first, hit like, subscribe, and join me on this journey of self-discovery. You're not alone, and sometimes the greatest strength comes from choosing to stand tall even when others don't.